You know what? This is in the movie, but when we were out there shooting in the middle of the woods, we were just doing a really simple shot of them tracking through the woods, and there's just an upside down car frame that's just
Oh.
buried in the ground in the snow. So you see it at one point. It's just a really simple shot of them moving, but there's just a car buried there.
Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watcher Pass. Today I'm joined by Billy Hanson, the writer and director of Bone Cold, which comes out on digital, DVD, and Blu-ray on June 13, 2023. I'm going to talk to him right now, and while you're watching, if you can like and subscribe to this channel, that would be fantastic. It'll sound a lot. Thank you. Thanks so much for joining me. Today I've got Billy Hanson, the writer and director of Bone Cold, which is out on digital, DVD, and Blu-ray on June 13, 2023. It is an action horror film that takes kind of a horror look at PTSD and military trauma. It's an interesting angle, and I kind of liked the way that it tried to weave that into a more entertaining medium than I think some of the documentaries about PTSD would be. So I'm really looking forward to talking to you, and thanks so much for your time.
I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Of course. So the first question, this feels like it could have been maybe a personal story, maybe something that hit close to home. What was the inspiration for this tale, and was it always this way, or did it start off as something else and just kind of morph as you were fleshing it out?
More the latter. The idea initially hit me as a single image. It was just kind of in my head as this guy alone in the snowy woods, and he's running from something in the distance, and there's just a creepy creature in the distance there. And it started there, and as I started pulling it apart and asking myself who this character was and what this monster was, it kind of grew very organically into this military PTSD story. And I would say it hits close to home, but at the same time, I'm not at all a military person. My family wasn't military. We didn't really grow up in that culture. So as soon as I kind of cracked the story open and I knew what I was dealing with, I did a lot of research. I talked to a bunch of people, and I really wanted to make sure that I got it right in terms of, that experience, what it feels like, and how something like that can manifest. And so I just hadn't really seen a movie or many stories that looked at action from a horror standpoint, and I thought there was something really interesting there. But in the research, I listened to a lot of people. There was a great podcast. The name is escaping me right now. I believe it's called "This Is War," and it's just people talking about their experiences in combat and at home. And I pulled a lot of inspiration from that and just the way that they talked about it and things. And we had, in the design of the monster, there was a lot of inspiration from vets who were exploring their own trauma. They would often, either draw pictures or describe creatures, silhouettes, shadows, that kind of thing. Yeah, so it sort of snowballed into this very strange psychological action horror thing.
That is really interesting. I thought that this was a military story all the way. So I thought that I was surprised that the initial thought wasn't military at all. It was just like someone isolated running from a monster, and that kind of like grew as you fleshed out the story. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's usually an idea doesn't start with a single image. It starts with like a character or a situation or something like that. But yeah, for me, this one it was very specific, and yeah, I just kind of like pulled it apart basically.
And I like I kind of give some more context for the monster itself, because it's tough to kind of tell what it is, but when you kind of describe it in those terms, you can think of, like, I don't know, in a lot of horror movies, you'll have someone drawing a picture and it'll just be like a shadow silhouette kind of thing,
Yeah.
all darkened pencil. And I guess that makes sense on where that monster might have come from as well.
Yeah, one of our creature designers, this guy Brian Hillard, he does work with vets, combat vets, and I guess one of the exercises that they do is they say draw your fears or draw kind of what you're feeling, and a lot of them do draw creatures that are like in the movie they're sort of misshapen but humanoid shadows and silhouette kind of things, and so he was pulling inspiration from that quite a bit as we were having those early conversations about what the creature would look like, how it would move, and all that stuff. So,
Very
uh,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. And so much of this film is about like the two main stars, the two kind of like the sniper duo. Where did you find John and Matt? Like, had you worked with them before? Was this like a normal casting call? Because I really like the chemistry between them. I thought that was like a very important part of the overall film.
Yeah, absolutely was. John is an old friend. We worked on something. We worked on a pilot together ages ago, and we had such a good time on that set. We just like stayed close friends, and I knew I wanted to work with him on something. So as this movie started to come together, he was actually the first one that I called, and I said, "John, do you want to like just go up to Maine and shoot this crazy little movie with me?" And immediately, without even hearing the story, he was like, "Yep, I'm in. Yeah, I want to do it."
That's
Uh,
awesome.
and so we started with him, and I knew what he was really good at. So when we were casting the part of Marco, I really I wanted someone really different with a really different energy, and like just filled the screen in a different way. And we found Matt Munroe, and that was a regular casting call. We had a bunch of people come in and read, and a bunch of great people, but when Matt came in, it was like, yeah, that's it. And John didn't tell us this during the casting process, but after we cast Matt, he's like, "Yeah, I just did a movie with Matt, and it was like the two of us in the movie." No way. So it made sense that they had such good chemistry and they worked so well together.
That is awesome. And yeah, I do like I really liked the difference in style, right? I just love it that like it's like a yin and a yang. Like John is more like calm, calculated as you would kind of expect for his, character, and then Matt is just kind of more like out there and a little bit more hot-headed, but he balances out John very well. So that's amazing that you randomly got them both together again.
Yeah, it's just like a small world thing, but yeah, one of the things I'm really proud of in the movie is that one of the first compliments I usually get when people see it is the actors are really good. I'm like, yeah, they kind of did a great job. So yeah, hats off to them.
Yeah, and they kind of have to be, right? Like a large part of the film is just them out there on the mission as things are
Yeah,
getting worse and worse. So you kind of have to have them be very good to keep your interest in what's going on.
yeah, no, it's absolutely true. I actually talked to somebody after they watched it, and I was like, "Yeah, it's basically two people in the woods." And he thought about it. He's like, "I that didn't even occur to me while we were watching it." And I was like, "Oh, good. I'm glad it didn't feel like that, because yeah, it is something you got if you have like that amount of focus on two people, two characters, you gotta make sure it's electric the whole time. Otherwise, you're just gonna sort of fade off into the distance." So.
Yeah, exactly. Although, is it two people in the woods or are there more in there? I don't
Oh,
know.
yeah.
um, so, well, this is now it became a military film. Um, where did you get these weapons from? Did you have to do any weapons training with the cast? And then also, did you yourself do some weapons training while you were kind of preparing the script and kind of preparing to get this made?
I did not. I would have loved to. That would have been really fun, and I really would have liked to be a part of that. I know that John, Matt, and Elise Bergreen, who played Sveta in the movie, they did their own weapons training. And with this one, it was such a low budget thing. We were moving really, really quickly, so there wasn't a lot of time. I had the idea for the movie in November of 2018, and we were shooting by February 2019. So it was
Oh
this
wow.
insanely fast turnaround. So everyone kind of did what they could on their own to prepare for it. But I know that they did some weapons training. The weapons on set were airsoft rifles, so we didn't we didn't have to worry too much about like safety training and all that. We told everyone like, listen, these look super real. They are not real. They cannot fire. Um, but I mean, you'd never be able to tell with the way that Matt and John were handling the weapons. They got so good at it, and that was something that was really important to me too. Is how they move, how they like even just move their eyes handling the weapons, and checking targets and that kind of thing. Um, so we did talk a lot about that. We watched a lot of military videos and that kind of thing.
Awesome. And you mentioned Elise just now. I loved her character. It's a shame that she was only in it for such a short amount of time because I thought that her
Yeah.
character was really interesting as well. Did she have a bigger role at some point, or was it just she was always in there just to be kind of like this interesting obstacle in the middle of their mission?
So she was always meant to be sort of like what's the word I'm looking for? Like very potent, like her scenes really impactful and memorable. There was a scene, and it hurt me to cut it, but she had a whole scene where she's speaking in Russian to her two henchmen, and she's sort of figuring out, she sees the body here, she sees the house is still warm with the door open, she's like, they just left, and it's this really cool scene. But our editor Art O'Leary was sitting with me, and he's like, "Hey man, this scene should go because this is a lot more impactful if you just leave on her face. You kind of get all of this in her look." And I was like, oh, you're absolutely right. And it totally works. And she is like a lot of people's favorite character because she's so cool and she's in there, for such a short amount of time. But um, she's such a badass character, basically. So yeah, I do kind of wish we had had more of her. But at the same time, I love that she's so memorable and impactful in such a small amount of time.
Yeah, exactly. When she pulled off that mask, I was like, "Oh, that's great!" Like, I love that that turn because you're not expecting that, and then the very few scenes you get to see with her, she is just a badass through and through.
Yeah, Elise too, and she's a good friend too. And I had a situation with her where I called her and I said, "Hey, listen, I think I have a part for you in this movie." And the next day, maybe even that same day, our casting director said, "Hey, I'm bringing in a bunch of people to read for this Sveta part." And I was like, "Oh no, I hope, now I got to call Elise and tell her she has to audition for it." So I called her. I was like, "I'm so sorry. I have to ask you to audition for this. We have a lot of people coming in." And she said, "Oh no, it's no problem." She's very sweet about it. And then she got the part anyway because she's so good with those close-ups and her face is so intense. But yeah, I think everyone was really happy with her in the movie.
Definitely. And you mentioned that something I didn't realize. You said that this filmed in February 2019, which I think by my calculation is like 45 years ago. It feels like it's some
Approximately 63. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, way in the past. I don't remember like shooting before like anything before COVID, but what was I guess why did it take so long to come out now? Was it just kind of life, or was there a specific? Did you like have to go and redo shots after COVID? Like what was the delay that happened for this coming out?
I mean, the quick answer is just pandemic, but like we planned to finish, I think, mid 2020. That was our goal.
Oh,
And
did
we had
something happen in mid 2020 that might have derailed
Yeah,
things?
I'm trying to remember what it was. At first, so yeah, we shot, I think we wrapped the last of our visual effects shooting right before the lockdown. Um, and so we were just full on post production and we had all of our deals in place. Like I said, this is a pretty low budget movie, and I worked in post production for a long time, so I worked out all these deals with people to sort of fit my movie in between their other big jobs. And you know Everything was in place for that. But then when the industry and the city and the world shut down, um our movie kind of got pushed to the side, very understandably.
Mhm.
And we kind of had to rebuild everything and just kind of work from scratch to get from A to B. I took over a lot of the post production myself, and it just and in that I had another kid, and then life, and it just we kept moving it along inch by inch. But that's ultimately the reason it took what two additional years in post production. I think we locked picture in July of 2022.
Oh wow. Yeah, so that definitely, I guess that does make sense. Like you had all this pipeline ready to go, and then pandemic and life kind of threw a
And yeah,
million wrenches into it.
yeah, and pandemic also meant we lost funding. It meant we lost companies just didn't exist anymore that existed before that we wanted to work with and that kind of thing. So yeah, it was really just we had to reset and take a step back and say, okay, how do we do this now? Because we had a lot of visual effects to get through, a lot of music. Our composer lives in London, so it was coordinating with him, and everything just takes a very long time.
Yeah, I hear London also was not a great place to be during the pandemic,
Yeah,
so
no,
probably had other
that's
things.
what we were dealing with too. He was like, the studio's not open, I can't go to the studio. And then when it did open, they were of course flooded with requests, so if we didn't get in there right away, it's just everything took much longer.
Well, I'm glad that you persevered. I'm glad that this was finally able to come out. It seems like it was a much longer journey than you expected, but I'm glad that you were able to kind of like pivot as we all had to do during the pandemic. So
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And I worked as a post supervisor for a very long time, and I never liked it. But when I ended up in that situation with the movie, I was like, you know what? Thank God I had all that experience because I know how to sort of navigate this. I know how to plan it out. And there was never a point that we were down. We never stopped down. We were working on it every single day. Even if it was just a couple emails to clarify something, we were pushing it forward every single day. So I got to thank the crew on that because, everyone was putting up with me for 4 years when they thought it was going to be maybe a year and a half.
but at least it came out, right? Like at least
Yeah. Oh,
it saw the light
I'm
of day.
so happy with it. I think too, one of the other reasons it took so long is because we knew that we were doing things the right way. We didn't settle for anything. So when the graphics didn't work out at one point, we stopped and we said, all right, let's rework the graphics. We're gonna tackle this again. So that's 6 extra months that we're working on more visual effects or something like that. So I do feel now, after 4 years of just tinkering and, well, not tinkering, but plugging away at it, I feel like we did it right. I feel like we did the right thing. We landed on our feet, and I'm so happy that it's coming out the way it's coming out, and that we're working with Wellgo. Yeah, so I think I'm very happy with it at the end of the day.
That is awesome. And you just mentioned the graphics, so that's kind of the perfect lead into one question I had. I love that you focus mostly on practical effects. There were definitely CG moments in this for some of the scenes, but I like that it seems like the majority of the effects were practical. Was that something that you specifically wanted to do? Was that budget? I know that sometimes it's budget, sometimes it's what the director wants, but I like horror films with practical effects. I think it looks so much better. So I'm just curious where that decision came from.
Yeah, I mean, it's always my intention to use practical effects. I like the digital stuff for enhancing, or slight minor corrections if something has to happen with a practical effect. And that's how we approach most of this stuff. Like, honestly, most of the blood hits are practical,
Yep.
with maybe one little spot for like the bullet to be on the front or something, the bullet impact site. And I think that served us really, really well because it was a marriage of the two. And with the creatures surreal stuff, oh, excuse me, the with the creature stuff, I really wanted that. I knew we were gonna put some CG on top of that, because the whole point of it was I didn't want your eye to ever fully land on it. I didn't want anyone's eyes to rest on the creature. I wanted it to be this surreal, ethereal looking thing. So I think the CG stuff works as long as there's a plan for it from the word go. I think a lot of people can fall into the trap of, we'll figure it out on the back end and we'll just put some CG on there. But if there's a plan for it in place, and you shoot it correctly, and you conceptualize it in a way, that will always work much better.
Yeah, for sure. And I like how you mentioned that you wanted to like keep the creature obfuscated, because it was definitely frustrating as a viewer to never be able to see it. But I understand like why you did that, because you're always like, oh, is it there? Is it there? And you can never get like a good sense during the film until certain scenes. But for the most part, it is this kind of like ethereal thing that's just on the periphery.
Yeah, and it really works, I think, in as the creature comes closer and closer and closer, because the whole thing is about distance. You keep things at a distance, but they're coming no matter what. And it sort of begs the question, like, what is that? What is that? And I feel like with the concept that we have, and with the creature, the way we've conceived it, you can't ever have a solid thing. Like it's never a solid thing. It's always this very surreal, psychological monster. So yeah, we had a lot of fun with that actually in post. Just like throw effects on top of it, and like, oh, this makes it do this cool thing, and now its face looks like it's melting. Cool. So we had a lot of fun with that.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you had fun after you had to scrap your entire
Yeah.
CG journey to restart it. So I'm glad that there was some fun there.
Yeah, we kind of pull those little moments of joy when we can.
savor those while you can. And
Exactly.
you mentioned this was filmed in Maine. Was
Mhm.
was the entire thing filmed in Maine? Because there were I guess California, because you had the desert scenes, you had like a mountain snow scene, and then like a town. Was the entire thing filmed in Maine? Is there a desert in Maine?
It was actually both. So we filmed all the stuff in the woods, and the scene in the bus in the beginning. That was all in Maine. So it was primarily here. But I live in California, so the rest of everything else, like in the house, in the desert, that was all like LA and around LA.
All right, awesome. And I guess that also explains how you were able to film both. Because I was like, is that my thought was, is that difficult to do that many different locales on an indie budget? But it seems like you kind of just used what you knew, which was the perfect way to kind of manage all those locations.
Yeah, and ultimately the movie was kind of conceived in a way. It started from a conversation with a friend of mine, and he basically put it to me like, if your next thing is you want to write and direct a feature, then look at the assets that you have in your life, not just financial, but like look at the actor friends you have, look at the locations you have access to, even props, like think of props, like and kind of build a story out of that. And the first thing I thought was, well, I'm from Maine. I've got a lot of family back there. I can go and shoot in the woods, and that's a beautiful location, big production value. Not a whole lot of people will be up there. That's what I'm going to do. So I kind of built it around that idea. And then same for LA. I was like, we can get a desert. That's no problem. And yeah, that's how a lot of the story kind of came through too.
That's perfect. And also, when you mentioned the feature part, I remember from your profile, I think this is your first feature. Is that right? Like, what was it like taking that on? Maybe a very different you back in 2018 when you probably first took this on. But what was that like? And were there any kind of things that you learned going into this that you will then take into your next feature? Because I know that was a big jump from doing series and shorts to like a full feature.
It definitely was a huge undertaking. I mean, I was ready for it. I was mentally very ready for it, and I was ready to really sink my teeth into something that was going to take a long time. And so I was excited at every challenge that came up, at least in the beginning.
You was
Yeah,
excited.
year three, I was like, all right, I'm ready to go. But no, it was exciting, man. It was really exciting, especially in the beginning because we were moving really quickly, and I was mostly working with my close group of friends. So we were just excited at tackling everything that we did, and shooting in Maine was honestly one of the best experiences I've ever had. And I think that whole cast and crew realized in the middle of that shooting, like, we're not going to ever have this experience again. This is a group of friends. We're living in close quarters. We're working our butts off to get this movie done. We're all excited about the story. And then, cut to now, I've learned a ton. And I'm like ready to tackle the next one now. Now I feel like, okay, I know how to do this, so I can make better decisions, moving into the next one.
Yeah.
Um,
Director 2.0.
it's exactly right.
It's also interesting that this, like, the structure of this and the way that it kind of develops, this would have been a perfect pandemic movie that was shot before the pandemic. Like, it's an isolated location, small cast. Like, you could.
Yeah, it's so funny to think that's correct, but like it absolutely is. Like, a lot of people assumed we had shot during the pandemic, and I was like, no, 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 I did this before. This is what I wanted to do.
I don't like people. I chose to make them small.
Yeah. I said, put me out in the middle of nowhere and let's freeze ourselves. But yeah, it's sort of the way it's coming out. The timing of it coming out is it's kind of with a lot of the pandemic movies, so it kind of fits right in.
Yeah. Well, hopefully your next one, maybe a larger crowd. Just enjoy the freedom that we have until whatever COVID 2.0, whatever the next variant is. I don't know what the next variant will be, but whatever that hits, like,
Yeah.
enjoy the people while you can.
Exactly.
And I saw at the end of the credits that last line I think is for your dad. I just wanted to ask if that is it in memory? Is it, or is this something that you like wanted to say, like, your first feature and dedicate it to him? Like, what was that connection as well?
So my dad was really instrumental in getting the film made. He is like, he was a very small town guy. He born and raised in Maine, and was always really proud of what I was doing. He, like, celebrated everything. And when we were shooting here, he took all his time off of work, and he was with us every single day at like 5 a.m. He was
Oh, wow.
basically a one-man grip team, and he had no experience on set or anything, but he was teaching himself how to build these big, 6x silks and all this stuff. And everyone on the crew loved him, and he very unexpectedly passed away in 2020, and it
Oh
was
my
shortly
gosh.
after we finished filming. And I think it hit everyone on the crew really hard because we had just spent all this time with him. And I was a little bit of a wreck for a while after that because I knew uh he wasn't going to be here to share this moment with us, all of the celebration of the hard work we had done. And we just had our LA premiere earlier this week, and I said in the beginning of it, like, I've been kind of dreading this day as much as I've been looking forward to it because he's not here, and it just doesn't feel right to not mention him. He's also in the movie. He's the first guy that gets taken out, the wrong target, basically.
Oh,
The
that's
the ball
awesome.
is, yeah,
That is great that he was
yeah.
able to kind of like make a showcase of that movie too. That's awesome.
Yeah, and honestly, that's one of the things that I'm uh thankful for, is that we've got this movie that he's going to be part of forever, and this is sort of a great way to remember him, and our time, our very short time with him.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry that that it happened, but I'm glad that you persevered and you were able to kind of like bring the movie to fruition. I'm sure he was or is proud of that aspect, that you were able to kind of finish it. And also that is another reason you could throw into why this film took so long. I can't imagine like what you were going through at the end of this film, and I have this big life event and I also have to get this film made. Like that must have been a ton of emotional
you know
turmoil.
it was a really difficult time, for many different reasons, but I will tell you, my youngest son was born, and he had a very scary birth where he almost didn't make it. And
Oh,
so,
jeez.
right when I was recovering from that, 9 days later, my dad passed away. So, and that was, right after we had wrapped filming. And so, yeah, I was a little all over the place there for a while. But, like I said, like the movie in a lot of ways helped me kind of get through that. And it was something to focus on and something to work on, and you know keep my mind on other things. So
Yeah, definitely. And glad to hear it. And also, yeah, I'm glad that you persevered and got this done. I know we have limited time today, so I'm going to switch to, I call it the lightning round. They're just lightweight questions about the film. I want to see how your personal experiences map to things in the film. You can feel free to pass on any of them. I will not be offended, but I try to keep them very answerable.
cool.
First question is the kind of like main soldier is a sniper. Have you ever fired a sniper rifle?
No, I wish.
You should try it. It's interesting. It's very
I mean,
interesting.
they're very loud.
They are. Although, so I went to a range in Nevada that like had them for some reason. I guess probably because it's Nevada and everything's legal
Yeah.
there. And like the like the sound wasn't the issue. It was just like the concussion of the round. Like even though it didn't like actually
Yeah,
hit you, it just like, I don't know, blows all the air out of the area. It just feels very weird. Like it feels like you got punched in the face without actually getting punched in the face.
they're incredibly powerful.
Yeah, yeah. Just like the airsoft guns that you have, they should have had this a similar feel. So, given that you haven't fired one, how accurate do you think you would be with a sniper rifle? Are you hitting anything? Are you hitting...
Oh, no, 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 not at all. I like, I know I was born and raised in Maine, but my like all the other men in the family are the gun guys. I'm in a corner reading a book or playing music guy.
You could be the spotter, maybe. That would be that's a
Oh, there you go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I could tell them where to hit.
you are the energetic, fiery part of the duo.
Yes, I will take that role.
Perfect. This film also starts with someone using a metal detector to find a hidden cache. Have you ever used a metal detector to find something?
I must have. I don't remember. I one of the towns I grew up in is Old Orchard Beach, and there's like a 7 mile stretch of beach. I have to have taken a metal detector out there at some point when I was a kid or something.
It is something that I've always like romanticized about doing. I don't think I've ever actually done it though. It's just always something that you're like, I'm gonna go and find treasure.
Yeah, it's all like key rings. Here's a nickel. I don't know.
There's like an old like soda can that someone left and just
Yeah,
baked and didn't want to cart it
litter,
back. Yeah.
litter. Yeah, it's a lot of that.
I think you already answered this question, but the film is kind of about hunting. Do you hunt or have you ever hunted?
I have. I grew up doing it. I never really liked it that much, though. I was much more like, if I was hunting with my dad or my brother, I was always, my imagination was running, and I was thinking of stories and thinking of cool things. That's probably where a lot of Bone Cold came from. Actually, is stalking through the woods with a rifle.
There you go. And yeah, and some of the horrors that you were imagining in the woods. It sounds like a perfect kind of way to create this story.
Yeah, I've always been a little creeped out by the woods. As someone who was born and raised in the woods.
I was gonna say that seems strange that you've been creeped out by the woods, given that you were surrounded by it growing up. But um, the film also mentioning the practical effects. There is a very bad splinter that one of the characters gets. When was the last time you had a splinter? I guess what was the worst splinter you ever gotten?
Oh God, I remember this actually. I was in high school. I We had a wooden floor, and somehow one of the little floorboards had been pried up, and no one
Oh,
noticed. And I was
oh,
walking through the house and stepped on it, and it just went right up into my foot. It was like back near my heel, and I had to have like three different people had to go in with tweezers to pull pieces of it out because it shattered inside my foot or splintered more inside my foot. Yeah, it was horrible. I remember how badly it hurt, and I'm pretty sure sobbing as a maybe like 16, 17-year old, which was embarrassing enough, but it was real bad.
I mean, don't be embarrassed. That is definitely a situation where you saw. That sounds terrible, and also like a good premise for your next horror film. That's
Oh
definitely
yeah,
a set piece that has to come in there. Uh, the film starts in Afghanistan. Have you been to Afghanistan?
I have not.
And then I think the middle part's in Ukraine, right? Or it's I think it's in Ukraine, or is it? Have you been to
Yeah.
Ukraine?
No, I actually have friends that have gone to Ukraine and said it's gorgeous, but no, I have never been there.
I assume
And
they went
I
before before the last couple of years. Is that?
yeah, they haven't been there in a little while. And funny enough, like I chose Ukraine in the script because there was nothing politically dangerous about writing it, setting it there. It was very much like, okay, well, this is not, dangerous territory to put it in. Sure enough, you wait 4 years making a movie, that kind of thing happens.
I didn't think about that until just now. That is insane.
Yeah, I was like the terrain is really similar to that in Maine. So I was like, okay, this could serve as Ukraine. And there had just been a civil war in Ukraine. So we were talking about, militias and stuff, and there were a lot of militias there at the time. That's what I was going for, something non-political. And here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Well, that's you are prophetic. I'm curious to see where your next film is set because we should probably be very
Yeah,
careful
we should
about the
start preparing for that now.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. This might be an interesting answer given you grew up in Maine. What is the strangest thing you've seen in the woods?
Ooh, I don't know. I've imagined a lot in the woods.
Mhm.
Um, Strangest thing I've seen in the woods. You know what? That's a good question. I might have to think about that one.
All right.
Yeah,
Well,
I'll ponder it. I'll try to come back to it.
okay, well, we don't have that much time because I don't have
Okay.
many questions, but let's see if this jogs it. The last question is, do you own camo?
I think I still have some from the movie.
There you go. That's a good answer. That is a good answer.
Yes.
Not the most useful pattern now, but it'll be useful in the winter if global warming doesn't have a say in this.
Yeah, and it's snow camo, so that'll be in the right direction, hopefully.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but you don't like. I guess you can go out in the woods in your camo and try to find the strangest thing you've seen.
I think I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna have to go try to find a bunch of strange stuff.
I mean, like anything abandoned, like abandoned cabins, abandoned like backpacks. I
I will
assume.
actually. You know what? This is in the movie, but when we were out there shooting in the middle of the woods, we were just doing a really simple shot of them tracking through the woods, and there's just an upside down car frame that's just
Oh,
buried in the ground in the snow. So you see it at one point. It's just a really simple shot of them moving, but there's just a car buried there. It was
that is strange. Yeah,
unexpected.
what's the story behind that? Right. That is the question.
Yeah, somehow that car got there in the middle of the woods.
Well, that's another good horror story to tell.
100%.
So the film is out on DVD, digital, and Blu-ray. Finally, on June 13th, 2023. You're out promoting it, getting the word out, going to premieres, publicizing the movie. But after people see this film, after they see your work, what can they look for next from you? I assume you have other projects that you've either been thinking about or working on in the interim. So I'm curious if there's anything else people can look forward from you.
Yeah, I'm the type of writer that's writing constantly. So I've got lots of stuff in my back pocket ready to go. I've been pitching a lot. Since the writer's strike, that's slowed down a lot. But hopefully, as soon as that's done, I'll have something that takes off. Thankfully, with the momentum of Bone Cold right now, people seeing it coming out, people knowing how much we did with such a little budget and such a small crew. I think people are looking to me to say, all right, what do you have next? What do you want to do next, kind of thing. So there will be another movie coming soon. I also have I'm also an author. I have another collection of short stories that I've been bringing around to publishers. So we'll see. That'll be a second book for me. So hopefully that'll come out sometime next year. Um, I work a lot in television, so we'll see if if one of those shows pick up. I was a story producer on the Eli Roth Legion of Exorcists show that's airing now, and on Travel Channel and on Max. And I was also a story producer on the Summer Baking Championship, which also is airing now. And my episode premiered earlier this week, so I'm kind of all over the place.
Yeah, both very different things than I expected from the writer director of Bone Cold. So.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't really make the connection to like action, horror, thriller, and the Summer Baking Championship. But
Renaissance man is a great term. I think that is a useful one. Actually, there's one last question I just thought of now when you were talking about it. Where did the name Bone Cold come from? Was that what you always had the script as, or did it come like maybe you were freezing in Maine when you were filming it and you're just like, this is the perfect title for it?
No, it hit me all of a sudden. I don't know where it came from, but the more I thought about it, the more it really stuck. And I think I remember when it hit me, I was just in my hallway in my apartment, and I walked into my bathroom, and I said to my wife while she was brushing her teeth, I was like, "Hey, I think my movie's called Bone Cold," and she just kind of was like, "Okay, great," she approved. But I think it really stuck with me because it's something that is very organic. It's something that is like from within your own body, and you don't. It's a problem if you're feeling cold inside of your body, and that's really it highlights what the story is that we're talking about. So it really stuck with me. And actually, someone suggested I change the title at one point, and I said, absolutely not. No, I love it.
Perfect. Yeah, and you're right. It's like not visceral is the wrong word, but it is something that like really does. You feel it when you hear that title, when you hear those words.
Yeah, and there's a line in the movie when John gets out of a really hot shower that's burning his skin, and he says, "I'm freezing," and I was like, that is exactly what it's. I feel like that's what it encapsulates right there. That bone cold that won't go away.
Yeah, exactly. And also, you get the benefit. I've talked to some indie movie directors and producers that say like you want to be in the upper part of the alphabet. So when people are scrolling through the new releases, you'll be in the early ones. And so Bone Cold is a B, so it's perfect. It's right up there.
Oh, what a solid hack that I never knew about. That's a really great idea.
Yeah, there you go. Like I talked to the director of what was it called? All About Who You Know. And the film was originally called Who You Know, and his just really like, no, you gotta get it up there. So you put All About Who You Know.
An amazing trick.
There you go. So
absolutely, everything's going to start with numbers now.
Exactly. Two Bone Cold. There you go. That's the number 2 for the sequel.
Yeah, Two Bone, Too Cold.
Yep, there you go. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. This is Billy Hanson, the writer and director of Bone Cold, which is coming to DVD, Blu-ray, and digital on June 13th, 2023. So you can check it out either, on disc, or you can see it. Is it coming to theaters also, or are you just doing like premiere screenings right now?
We're just doing premiere screenings right now. Yeah, but mainly they're pushing the digital and the Blu-ray stuff.
Well, perfect. So you can see it, either disc or digital. You can see it in the comfort of your own home, and make sure to kind of bundle up so you don't get frostbite from this movie. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
That was Billy Hanson, the writer and director of Bone Cold, which comes to digital, DVD, and Blu-ray on June 13, 2023. It is a horror action film about a mission that goes FUBAR and takes kind of a horror cut at PTSD and military trauma. If you like this interview, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.